guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. I don't really do too many discussion type videos, but I felt like this one was definitely warranted because a brand new add-on has recently made it over into the hands of the public. An add-on that got so many in the community riled up against it. Like, seriously, the amount of drama over this add-on has been crazy, just out of nowhere, out of left field. The add-on essentially imports WoW logs and parses into the in-game as a tooltip. Just all you have to do is mouse over a player and you can see exactly how they performed within the newest raid tier. However, parses aren't everything, and so many players have noted that this add-on has a pretty high potential to create a fairly toxic pugging environment and potentially even completely ruin it. So I wanted to give some of my thoughts on what I think about the add-on, go over exactly what it does, as well as why so many players are up in arms against it. But I also do encourage all of you to also share your thoughts in the comments of this video, as I really want to hear what you think about this add-on, and if you think if it's a big deal or possibly something that is being blown out of proportion. As always, if you guys want to catch more future updates for the WoW Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So first things first, let's go over what is this add-on that got so many players riled up in the first place. And it is the Archon, or the Warcraft Logs Tooltip add-on, as it displays parses from WoW logs in a tooltip that is within the game just by mousing over other players. It pulls information from a website called WoW Logs, a very much accepted website utilized by so many in the community, whether it is for improving, whether it is for competition with parses, whether it is for looking up strats. It gives you so much detailed information regarding how players do each fights, and it can really help you learn how to play a class by watching and seeing what another player, more experienced player, does with their cooldowns, does with their defenses, does with their positioning. It gives you so much additional information that can technically help you learn how to play your class better for certain specific encounters. So the tool itself isn't bad. However, there's always an opportunity with this new add-on for this feature to be used for wrong reasons. As for the purpose of this add-on, the authors of the add-on actually state a couple of pieces of interesting information. One, it's a very highly requested feature, and they're just serving the public by creating this add-on. All it does is allows players to look up the logs of any player that signs up for the groups a lot easier. Very similar to kind of how we got the add-ons way back in the day of gear score to tell you if a player is super well geared, or Raider.io for M+ score before we got it integrated into the game to tell you how experienced a player may be in dungeons when trying to fill your group. And this add-on essentially does the same thing. It allows players to provide them with more information regarding the players signing up for their raid runs, and allows you to fill a group better with more quote-unquote competent players so that you can get through your raid runs a little bit quicker and easier. There's also two versions of this add-on. One, a free version that gives you a quick synopsis of some of the parses of a person signing up for your group, but also a paid subscriber tier that gives you a little bit more detailed information showing the parses of every single boss encounter for, I guess, the current Liberation of Undermine raid, for instance, that give you a little bit extra detailed information. However, immediately, as soon as this add-on became live to the public, it instantly saw a lot of concerns from the community, with many bringing up some worrisome possibilities of what this add-on could mean when it comes to Pug World specifically. The add-on itself could potentially bring in more gatekeeping and toxicity to the world of pugs, and many players are very concerned that that's essentially what it's going to do, which isn't necessarily making the pug world better. In some cases, it can make things worse, and the experience overall, not that great. Potentially, the add-on itself could be part of this slippery slope, yet another add-on that will eventually probably will get integrated as part of the in-game. But if it gets accepted and becomes the norm for the pug world, and if it's toxic, and if players utilize it wrongly, then it can create much worse overall experience that everybody has to go through, not just a number of players that actually end up utilizing this add-on. To some degree, utilizing this add-on, it may actually create an extra layer of hurdles that a player now has to jump through, especially if you play the game from a solo player perspective, from the pug world perspective, that now you have an extra hurdle for you to overcome just to join a group. It was bad enough if, let's say, you needed to have a super highly geared character just to get invited for that item level. Then you also needed to develop the knowledge on the mechanics and show off that you have your AUTC achievement just to get into some of these groups. But now you also need to learn how to parse. Now you need to also learn how to record your own parses just so you can develop the numbers necessary to get into groups. And for many, they feel that this may create too many hurdles that could discourage players from even attempting or even exploring the group content, especially if you're someone who doesn't do this on a regular. Maybe War Within is one of your very first expansions, you're coming back to the game, try to take it seriously. That could be potentially an extra layer that could discourage more players from even interacting with group content whatsoever. The logs themselves, however, isn't new. This website of WoW logs has been around for a very long time. I don't know exactly when it started, but I'm pretty sure there's parts that go as far back as Mists of Pandaria. Potentially there was some sort of a website that did the very similar thing back in TBC or Wrath or Kata days. I would have no knowledge of it, but it's been around for a very long time. And it's not necessarily that logs are an issue. Parse culture has been around for a very long time. The problem that many players are having with this is the fact that now there's an add-on that makes it much easier to integrate logs into the game. Because it's such an easily integratable add-on, very similar to what we had with things like Gear Score, Radar.io, things like that, it could potentially become very much a standard feature that many players could easily start to utilize, to the point where they might even be able to, if let's say they're just a commonly accepted feature, maybe become part of the in-game ecosystem. I mean, back in the day, Gear Score wasn't a thing. It just was an add-on that players invented way back in the day, but eventually became so widely used, we got item level out of it. Then Radar.io score as well. Radar.io for M+ gave you players an idea of, let's say you have somebody sign up for your group, they gave them a score to tell you, hey, this player might be a little bit more experienced, they have a really good score. Potentially this could mean bringing them along could mean that your weekly key could get done a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner, and then eventually they integrated that Radar.io score, which became so common in WoW ecosystem, into a proper Mythic Plus rating. And many are wondering if this is another one of those add-ons that could potentially be something that Pugs start to utilize, something that gets traction, somebody becomes accepted in the Pug world, and then maybe even potentially they might even make it part of the base UI feature at some point in the future. Logs themselves are not terrible. Logs, in fact, is a fantastic tool that many players can utilize to get a lot more additional information regarding encounters, regarding how certain players of certain classes and specs deal with those encounters. You can see what kind of cooldowns they utilize, so in a way it can be used as a great learning tool for guilds, for players, to improve on how they end up dealing with a variety of different raid mechanics by watching what other players do. It gives you so much useful information, but all that information by itself isn't terrible. It all comes down to how players are going to end up utilizing it. One of the problems with WoW logs, in my opinion, is the score that attaches to many players out there. It really just looks and tries to capture your DPS or HPS of a class. The higher the number, the higher the score. However, that score is also not a smart system either, as none of these systems really are. The item level, the Mythic Plus score, it just tries to assign a number based on how well you did. But logs in particular just looking for raw numbers. However, inside of Raid, raw numbers for healing per second or DPS, any of those things, they're only a part of the equation. In a raid, mechanics play a pretty big part. Being able to play ethically also plays a very big part. Making sure some players are just going to have to make sacrifices to commit to certain roles or interact with certain mechanics within a raid encounter. So their technical DPS numbers will naturally be lower because sometimes that's what the encounter requires out of you. Some players are just going to have certain jobs that will mean a DPS loss, but you have a very important job. But the logs website can't really rank that properly. All they can take a look at is the DPS and HPS of a class. To some degree, the logs themselves, like if you just look at the parsing specifically, the parsing aspect of it primarily, in a way, some of the best parsers out there are players that are padding or players that are ignoring mechanics completely just so they can output additional numbers. To some degree, if you just look at logs as just part of the parse culture, it's kind of like a feature that, in a way, that score assignment kind of encourages unethical play to some degree. And that's where the potential for toxicity for this add-on can potentially arise in the future. It's all about how players utilize it, because there's a little bit of a concern that many players are not going to go into the details of parses as to, oh, let me look up this mage, let's see why his logs were a little bit lower. Oh, he actually played super ethically and did all the mechanics, had to sacrifice DPS. Yeah, I'll take this guy into my group. Most players are not even going to go past that. They're just going to see the log, see the green 34 parse, or blue potentially, purple, and they're looking for oranges and pink parses, and they're just gonna end up skipping you over, even if you play like an ethical team member within a raid encounter. And if hypothetically, let's say this add-on does become accepted by the general pugging community, now every player that's looking to do pugs and group content may need to look into how to start parsing, how to start recording their own logs. And like I said before, let's say you're a brand new player coming back to the game from WoW Within after so many different expansions of not playing the game. You're trying to get back in, you're trying to gear your character, trying to learn the fights, and now you have to learn how to parse in order to even start getting accepted into random groups. And I guess the question is, are these hurdles that we're going to be creating artificially ourselves, are they really good for the overall community? Because you're creating a higher barrier of entry, which can discourage so many players out there. And this makes me very, very glad. That good thing that they're investing more time into some of the more solo content out there, like delves in particular, by improving the reward structure, the variety of activities, the variety of different rewards you can get from delves. Even if players do want to, let's say, join Pug world, but now they feel like there's so many different hurdles out there, at least there's content that they can interact with without having to jump through all of those hoops. But recently, especially for this season, we saw an influx of so many more players interacting with the Mythic Plus Dungeon season, especially in Season 2. This is a very, very good to see thing, and seeing more players pushing to plus 12s and higher creates a little bit more life and variety of different groups that you can dive into when it comes to Mythic Plus Dungeons. The more players, the better in most cases. Raids right now, with Liberation of Addon in particular, I also would say are very, very puggable. Maybe the last few bosses on Heroic may potentially give so many players a little bit of struggle, but this add-on could possibly have an adverse effect of not encouraging more players, but rather discouraging players from being able to even get invited to groups out there. And I guess my question is, does creating more barriers of entry when it comes to trying to get more players to join group content, is that really a good thing at the end of the day? Like I said, the logs themselves and the actual resources that we have, it's not a bad add-on, it's not a bad set of information that you can get. In fact, it can be used for so many good things when it comes to improving on how you play your class, on how you perform within certain raid fights. There's so much good that can come out of it. It's just the way that logs does the ranking with parses, I feel like can create a lot of this like bad use out of it when it comes to the world of pugs. And I think we definitely need to rethink the way that logs end up attaching a number parse towards, I guess, parses within WoW raid content. And don't get me wrong, going for the highest damage numbers and competing against your friends, I find it a lot of fun. I'm a huge fan of, at the end of a raid tier, once you've learned all the fights, once you've mastered all of them, being able to get a solid parse, get a bunch of oranges and even pink parses out there, maybe even a 100 parse at some point throughout a season, is incredibly fun for me. But the issues with parses is they don't really take into account ethical play to try to score a player. Being able to, let's say, cut down on DPS to perform mechanics doesn't award you a better score. In fact, it actually lowers it. So to some degree, it promotes padding and damage over ethical mechanic purposes, and mechanics is a huge portion of a raid encounter in a lot of the cases. But I guess what I really wish is, I wish logs was a little bit more robust when it comes to ranking players, not just in raw damage numbers or healing numbers, but I wish they could somehow find a way to incorporate mechanical play, or proper defenses usage, or how often you interact with certain mechanics when you are assigned by a raid leader or by like a weak aura. Just find a way to like incorporate a score of how ethically you played within an encounter where damage wasn't the only thing that you were being ranked on. Then I think if they had some kind of a system like that, where ethical play actually get calculated into the parse number, in some way or another, or potentially even just be a separate number away from just the raw damage or healing parts, then I think an add-on like this wouldn't really be a problem whatsoever. But as it stands right now, because it's all about the raw damage numbers, it will most likely give Pugs a really wrong impression of just about every player that signs up for the group. But that's about all I got regarding the topic. I do want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about this add-on? Do you think it's going to be a major issue like so many players are afraid of, or do you think it's actually not going to be that big of a deal? Are you going to be utilizing this add-on yourself when it comes to pugging content, or are you somebody who's actually going to be opting out of this add-on completely, as players are able to opt out by hiding their character in the WoW logs so the add-on cannot track you? Do you think the implementation of this add-on is a good step forward for WoW and potentially maybe Blizzard should make their own version? Or do you think that we are taking a step into an unknown that's probably going to make the pugging experience much worse than ever before? Let me know all those thoughts in the comments down below. But as always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching and hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in our next one.